Okay, we'll call the meeting to order.
There you go, right there.
Please stand for silent prayer and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a quorum. I read the affidavit of posting. This is a meeting of the Washington County Board of Supervisors. Prior to this meeting, public notice was given by posting a copy of the agenda in the office of the county clerk and emailing the agenda to the West Bend Daily News, which is the official newspaper. In addition, the agenda was emailed to CNI Newspaper, Express News, Kewaskum Statesman, Milwaukee Journal, WIBD, WMBZ Radio, and WTKN Radio. This above action is in conformity with the state of Wisconsin's open meeting law. First on the agenda is the consent agenda. Entertain a motion to accept. Peter? Bob? Any questions, comments? We'll vote on this. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, if it's okay, I'd like to move consideration upon request readings of resolutions and ordinances. Resolution A, Resolution 218-22, commendation of Randolph Beaudry, and B, 2018 Resolution 23, commendation of Consuelo Montanez. Did I say that right? Montanez. Okay. Okay. Have a motion for that? Joseph and Chris. For Bossert. Sorry. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll move that forward.
Just gotta read it.
Gotta read it?
But you need a motion in this,
We have to
Okay.
for the first.
okay.
Yeah, we did both of them.
We have to do them.
Yeah.
Whereas Randolph B. Beaudry has contributed more than 37 years of loyal service to the citizens of Washington County, whereas Randolph B. Beaudry has chosen to retire from his present position of Deputy Sheriff Sergeant at the Sheriff's Office, now therefore be it resolved that the Washington County Board of Supervisors pause in its deliberations to pay tribute and to commend Randolph B. Beaudry for his 37 years of meritorious service. Be it further resolved that on behalf of all citizens of Washington County, this body does herewith extend to him heartfelt thanks for his many accomplishments and successes. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Randolph B. Beaudry as a token of appreciation on the part of this board.
Stand with our... Come on up.
Come on up. I didn't know I was doing anything.
You have to give a speech.
Oh, I give a speech.
Okay.
Well, last time I gave a speech at a Christmas party, I always said no comment. That's kind of typical for the Sheriff's Department. But it's been my pleasure to work here my over half my adult life. I just turned 61, so 37 years. I worked for 5 sheriffs. I do want the county and the residents to know that over my long career, you have an outstanding county. You have an outstanding Sheriff's Department, and I have been very proud to work for the last several years for Sheriff Dale Schmidt, my 5th sheriff. So I want to thank him for tolerating me over the many years that we've worked together. When Dale started as patrolman, I was actually his supervisor, so there's no one at the Sheriff's Department other than the first 2 or 3, or the last 2 or 3 that have been hired that I haven't supervised, so I wish them all the best of luck and continued good luck to the county. Thank you.
This small token of appreciation for all your years of service. Seems a little bit less for 37 years,
Well,
you know.
that's okay.
But I did my 29 years in law enforcement, so I feel your pain.
I
Thank
can
you so
honestly
much.
say I don't miss it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whereas Consuelo Montañez has contributed more than 17 years of loyal service to the citizens of Washington County, and whereas Consuelo Montañez has chosen to retire from her present position of custodian in the Administration Maintenance Department, now therefore be it resolved that the Washington County Board of Supervisors pause in its deliberations to pay tribute and to commend Consuelo Montañez for her 17 years of meritorious service. Be it further resolved that on behalf of all citizens of Washington County, this body does herewith extend to her heartfelt thanks for her many accomplishments and successes. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Consuelo Montañez as a token of appreciation on the part of this board.
Stand with You don't have to do a speech if you don't like to.
Okay.
Well, Consuelo, thank you very much for your service. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I'd like you to do this small token of appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to personal appearances, letters, and other communications. A is Economic Development, Washington County Executive Director Christian Teslak, annual update. Christian?
So good evening. We have the great fortune of being able to meet with you formally, actually, twice a year. The other time of the year is right around the month of November, when we give the executive committee a formal briefing on the revolving loan fund program. We go through the portfolio, status of the portfolio, and so on. And this particular briefing is actually focused more on the organization as a whole, performance within economic development across the county, and then also strategy going forward. So there will not be much focus on revolving loan fund program data at this time. Instead, we'll be focusing on some of the other aspects, but I'm happy to pose any questions. I'm also seeing, obviously, some new faces on the board of directors, on the county board here. So we'll take a few seconds to go ahead and introduce members of our team. You can see we actually went a little old school. I've been hearing now for 2 meetings how we can't read some of the charts and whatnot. So we blew them up, put them on paper. Feel free to jot some notes, and you have them for your future reference and fun later. As far as the team goes here, you'll notice a few things. One, there's a significant and diverse experience on the team. And the second thing you'll notice is that there's longevity. The members that you see here have been with EDWC in the case of Pat Tomey, who's the revolving loan fund chair, and who we've also since contracted with to support some of the loan activities as we've scaled that part of our business, if you will. He has been with the organization since its inception in 2005. I've been with them since effectively the end of 2009, and Deb has been with us. I'm trying to remember exactly what year you joined us. 2012. So you've got some great longevity on the team here as well. The third thing you'll notice is that in our respective spaces, we also have a statewide footprint. In my case, I served as president of the Wisconsin Economic Development Association, continue to serve as counsel statewide to various development groups. Deb's been involved in the real estate world historically, and is obviously currently involved and continues to be involved with the Hartford Union High School Board. So we engage across the community and across the state in different ways. Pat continues to provide counsel as part of his private practice, not just statewide, but nationally to companies both at Fortune 500 levels as well as small growing companies in Washington County, for example. Every time we get a chance to meet with you is exciting because we take a different slice. And for those who have been with this board for a while, don't want to bore you with some of the same stuff, so we present a different slice of what's going on. Tonight's slice is really focused in on the fact that we're now, and have been this year, embarking on the third phase of our evolution as a development organization and as a development mission. And what you'll see here on page 3 of your packet is, despite moving through different phases of that evolution, we have maintained focus on the objectives of the development mission as it relates to taking this partnered approach. In 2005, really, you began the first phase, which was to effectively, I'm going to use the word outsource economic development to a public-private partnership. And so really that first phase was about coalescing across the county, the communities, the county's efforts, and coming together in this economic development effort. When I came on board in 2010, or the end of 2009, it became very clear that the coalescing was done. It was time to really focus and introduce accountability and impact to our effort. And as you look at these objectives, 2010 is really when we took a look at these objectives and said we've got to center our strategy around them. And while I'm not going to read this document, I will actually run through these items, because again, we've been consistent in this next phase. We'll continue to focus on these objectives. One, and also I'll focus on this because as a board, these are objectives that you set back in 2005, and we continue to have these right at hand. You wanted to co-leverage increasingly scarce resources. That clearly hasn't gone away as you continue to evolve the county strategy and the way that you're doing business. You're focused in on, again, increasingly leveraging and more effectively leveraging those scarce resources. We didn't want to make this a strictly public sector endeavor. This is clearly a private and public partnership. You've got the private sector who's creating the jobs, and you've got the public sector who has unique capacity to be able to help this area compete through unique programming. And that's something that we continue to engage as we go forward through these strategic evolutions. We also, in the early days, recognized that economic development is most effective when we're buffering really what amounts to business decisions from the politics of a county. You want to be making loan decisions not on the basis of who knows who, but on basis of the economic opportunity that exists and the ability to repay. And that's been an important piece of this. We know that differs, for example, from even the statewide entity, which is, in essence, a quasi-governmental, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. And they have been, if you will, learning from some of the experiences of not keeping that buffered. Despite the disruption in our economies, and even in the toughest part of the economy back in 8, 9, 10, 11, we were seeing significant wins on the basis of the strategy and the focus that we have, which is first and foremost on doubling up on those companies that have already made a choice to be here in Washington County. We can attract and engage in attraction projects like the best of them, if not better. However, our strategy is really uniquely tailored to those companies who are here and helping them expand. We also have been focused on making sure that we not only attract top talent within our development mission, but we actually secure them, and I already addressed that through some of the longevity of the team. We continue to need to move at the speed of business, and that hasn't slowed down. That just keeps on accelerating, and so we have to be able to keep pace with that. Last but not least, we really are focused on creating a self-propelling engine of growth, and you'll see that later as we talk about this next evolution in the strategy and how you've been investing a portion of the sales tax to generate an engine of growth, and that has been helping to facilitate continued growth of that resource for the county and its communities. And of course, at the end of the day, it's about elevating Washington County as a leader, not just in economic development, but in getting deals done and growing companies. And you'll see here in the next pages as we go through, the angle we're looking at in this annual report is taking a look at these first two phases, what the results have been and how they've tracked against our goals. So that really means looking back as far as 2010 and tracking them up through last year. And then we'll close by talking about what this next phase, this invest and grow phase, looks like and where we're taking that. So if you look at the data, the top data on our dashboard, which you'll see this in a different format again because we're tracking over time, you'll see we set out some goals year by year on job creation. And I'll reiterate, again, we're not creating the jobs. It's the companies that we work with that are clearly doing the job creation. Our goal is to fuel that growth. And you can see that we have been trending well above our annual goals and the annual trend. In fact, now as we look at this next phase, the question is, do we accelerate our goals? And given the fact that we've got consistent overperformance, which is obviously a positive thing. On the private investment side, we've seen much higher than expected outcomes. And we're talking literally hundreds of millions of dollars. This is, to be clear, not the partners that are investing in EDWC. That would be nice. However, this is actually the new investment that's ongoing in our economy. Things like a new building or an expanded building or new equipment. These are the kinds of things that represent new private investment that we track here through the projects that we're directly involved. And again, you can see when you set these targets, not only have we been overperforming, but we've been able to continue to accelerate that work and partnering with the companies that we serve. Last but not least, this is the revolving loan slide, if you will, on page 6. What we've done is we've taken an aggregate number here in terms of funds that have been financed. So this isn't the size of the portfolio, which you'll notice right away. What this is essentially shows the power of that revolving portfolio. So while we really got going in earnest in 2011 and 12, once we started setting up the attraction and impact funds, you could see we were able to accelerate the revolving loan financing rather substantially. We had a major deal in 2017 that essentially skewed the curve a little bit there. You're going to be contemplating another opportunity later tonight, which will continue to skew that curve in the right direction. But again, this shows the power of the revolving nature. Right now, our portfolio is roughly sized at just shy of $10 million in aggregate, and yet we've been able to do over $30 million worth of loans since 2010 based on the payments that come in and revolving those out to the next project. This next slide is
Brian's
yes,
question?
sure.
Excuse me, Christian, this is Brian Gallitz, one of the new supervisors you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, you bet.
You go through 2017, and maybe you'll talk about this, what the next projection is, but my question is, for the last 6 years, 7 years, was that a conservative goal since we've exceeded that considerably? And will the next goal be more aggressive, or can you shed any light on that?
Yes, it was what we would consider to be an appropriate and a potentially achievable goal, but initially we thought it was aggressive. It turned out that we were wrong on that, that we were able to overperform consistently. As a result, we are actually in this third phase, reevaluating not just the goals, but the entire dashboard to align and have the metrics align with the actual strategies themselves. So for example, a new metric that we'll be introducing is customer value, and being able to measure that value of working with those growth companies over time. And so that'll be a new metric we'll be introducing. So the short answer is we thought we were being aggressive. It's exciting to be able to perform that. We will be resetting that to account for the fact that we seem to have consistently overperformed that trend. Where that goes exactly, that's where our board is right now discussing. So that'll be something we'll be reporting out in the future.
Thank you.
Some other questions based on what's been presented so far. This page 7 information, if you were with the board last year, this is the same information we shared last year. We did not update the impact data based on this year's, or I should say 2017 data for a couple different reasons. One, based on the question that you had posed earlier, we're right now tweaking our dashboard and modifying it to align with the new strategy, or with the evolved strategy here. Secondly, we've actually invested in a a custom product that has had a set of economists that have built out a model for us, because right now, or historically, we had to go to an outside vendor, pay on a per project basis. We found there was enough need to really understand what the impacts of our work is, not just like looking backwards, but also looking forward. So when we make an investment, and that's really what public sector engagement is, if they're presenting incentives, it's an investment in the project opportunity. You want to understand what that impact is, not just in jobs created and in the raw direct new investment, but what is that going to mean for sales tax revenue? What is that going to mean for property tax revenue? What is our ROI and what is our payback period? We decided there was enough need for this, and we were really needing to work smarter and continue to work smarter with the scarce dollars that we had, and wanted to pick and choose projects in a way that would generate highest and best impact, that we went ahead and our board made the investment to have a group put together a custom model for Washington County that gets updated every year based on all of the inputs, everything from Department of Revenue data on where the villages and other municipalities are spending on water and sewer, and taking all of this information on the costs of providing services to your taxpayers, to our taxpayers and to our residents, including the businesses, and measuring that alongside of what is the revenue that comes off of every new job that's created, and taking an average every year and updating that year by year. So that model has been built out. Our team has been trained on it actually this past week, or last week, sorry. That's how fast and furious things are moving. We were trained on it last week and are evolving the model. It's not quite ready. We were hoping we could have a presentation of a test run of the model based on the project for this evening, but we don't think it's including everything that it should include. So we're continuing to work with the economists to make sure that they fine tune it. And so look forward to that as a go forward analysis, and then we'll be able to update this impact information. In the meantime, though, it's important to really note that it's not just the 300 and some million worth of new investment. It is the fact that on an annual basis, you can see here based on this page, excluding 2017, we've had over 146 million in new annual wages that is flowing through the economy. These are new wages, incremental, not revolved wages. So a lot of opportunity here, and we look forward to being able to fine tune the work that we do and its impacts. And again, we'll be presenting that going forward. On page 8, you'll see a different slice. We've really never shown you the data in this way before. Obviously, we present a financial statement historically on revenues and spends of the organization, but we decided to work the data in a way that shows how the spends that we make in one year result in ROI for the work that we do in the next year. So what you'll see on page 8 is the blue bars represent the spend. The year underneath is the year of that spend. So in 2006, we had a roughly $150,000 worth of expenditures in our budget that we did that year. Then you can see we offset the revenue by 1 year to show, okay, if we spent money on programming that year, what impact did that have on the revenue that we can use to spend for the next year? And you'll see that we offset the revenue then. So if you look above that 2006 blue line, you'll see in 2007 then we had revenue into the organization that exceeded that 200,000 figure there. And then that carries forward. What you see in the little bubbles, both above and below represent obviously major investments in the organization. So at the end of 2009, I came on board, represented an uplift in investment for the organization, and then you can see what's been happening to the revenue trajectory after that. We needed to revamp and make a website that was usable not just from a marketing perspective, but as importantly, for those of us in the field actually presenting value to companies and being able to pull data raw in the field. And you can again see that represented an investment and an increase in expenditure for that year that then returned a new revenue on the other side. On the top side, you see that there were some pushes that were done throughout the evolution of the organization. The first push in 2010 was to really look at our private sector investors and say, gosh, there's more we can do in engaging the private sector from an investment standpoint. And now this is into EDWC. This is not that new investment in the economy I was talking about. This is our private partners in EDWC contributing dollars to the organization. We needed to work with them. So if you look at the private investor line, we did a strategic push on that, and you saw an uplift on that line. We then focused our attention, or refocused our attention from investors and added to that attention really performing on the impact and attraction funds that the county then set up. And then you can see how the RLF line, which is the blue line, bolted upward because of that new opportunity. So essentially what you're seeing here is the elements of that growth engine at work. When we make an investment, you're seeing an offsetting opportunity in revenue that we then reinvest in the next year to continue forward and accelerate those results. So what is all of this telling us? You can see that there are really 5 conclusions that we're drawing from this. One, we can continue to throughout have stayed focused on those objectives that you set at the beginning for partnership, and that'll continue to play forward in our evolution. We've also, anytime we've made an investment, we've found that we've been able to get payback usually within a year, and that those investments have continued to accelerate results, which led to the earlier question regarding if you continue to overperform, why not continue to adjust those goals, and we will be doing that. Thought you might find fun and interesting when we look at the engine of growth. This concept is not new. Here is an engine of growth that was created by Walt Disney himself back in the 1950s. He could have never, you would say, he could have never imagined what his initiative is, what began as a small effort of a talented creative studio creating some basic theatrical films, but actually that would not be true. Back in the early 50s, he created and envisioned the growth model that continues to operate today. And one of the things that you'll notice in that growth model is one area of business feeds another area, and it's just the self-fulfilling engine that continues to turn and grow. We're not Walt Disney and we're not Disneyland, but we have, you can see below here, comparatively, been developing over time and evolving a growth engine of our own here in Washington County as it relates to economic development. And while there's a spaghetti of activity going in, and again, I won't do a deep dive, feel free to ask questions or even reach out to me later to talk more about this. There's 3 components I do want to point out. One, you've got the activity areas, which are what's circled, and the ones that are circled are the ones that are live right now. So some of these areas don't exist. They're part of that future vision, but we have that future vision. The other area that you'll notice is really at the center, and this is the core, which is the driver. In the case of Disney, their driver was their creative talent. In our case, it's the talented consultants that we have that are really fueling and driving that business growth platform here in Washington County that serve as that core. Then when you think the areas of service that we have to those growth companies, they're really feeding each other. So when there is an opportunity to consult with a company on their growth and their project and really help them maximize project performance and hence then community performance, you'll see that that might result in a future loan customer because of the fact that they are making some new investments and we can participate with a lead lender on accelerating aspects of their project and so on. So while there may have been inspiration in Disney, look, it's happening right here in Washington County in its own little way. So with that, that's really set the stage for this 3rd phase of the evolution, which is now really the growth and investment phase. And this is the strategy that you'll see laid out here in the next couple of pages. If you don't remember anything else, I would say page 12 is key here. It shows what the pillars of that strategy are, including the values that continue to stay strong and present. They were back some years ago, and they are strong today. At the end of the day, though, our focus is on being not just recognized locally, not across the county, but being seen statewide as really outpacing our peers in the economic development sphere, not by necessarily strictly job creation or new investment, by really creating that unbeatable platform of business growth and everything that it can mean. And in case you're wondering who we consider the peers to be, you'll see them listed at the bottom. There's an emerging peer in Waukesha, through Waukesha County, through the Waukesha Area Business Alliance. Otherwise, really, we don't feel, that we're at the top. We're right there with some of the best that's going on in the state. We do see issues on the horizon, and again, I won't do a deep dive into those except to say that they're across 4 areas. One is the fact that we continue to be in a space of disruption. We don't see that changing. There's going to be continuous disruption. It's only going to be happening faster and faster, and we need to be able to not only respond, but to be proactively ahead of the curve. And so our strategy is positioning us to continue to do that. We also recognize we exist in a competitive space. If we didn't, you might not even have a need to have incentives, for example. But the reality is we compete. And companies, as you may have heard me say before, they have a choice every day, all the time. And our goal is to make sure that we're optimizing the opportunity in Washington County so that their choices continue to be here. No secret on the workforce challenge, and with the Foxconn effect, if you will, it's only going to become ever more prevalent. Our biggest challenge, perhaps, is the fact that we continue to be this best-kept secret, and that's a shame. We should not be the best-kept secret. We should be out there and known by any and every business that's looking to engage growth here in Washington County. To address those issues and move forward and continue to evolve our strategy of growth and investment, you can see that we've got we've got, again, 4 quadrants of major goal areas for the organization. Obviously, Washington County is integrally involved right now, and you've already approved moving forward on working to build that loan portfolio so that we have not just a strong war chest, but as importantly, fuel to maintain that growth and have that self-fulfilling engine be able to continue to support and sustain on its own accord without additional and continued investments. Last but not least, this is really fresh and hot off the presses, which is one of the reasons why it's in paper as well here. Our board of directors met today, and today they, as part of advancing this strategy, have continued to involve our presence and the clarity of what we are to get past becoming that best-kept secret as part of not just branding, but the way that we capture our services. And you'll see that here on page 15. You'll notice that our historical brand is focused in on the businessreadywisconsin.com website and our geography. We continue to obviously be economic development Washington County, but we want to really advance with others who haven't experienced us what those who have experienced us tell us. And it's 2 things. We wish we had involved you sooner and fired our CPA in the process. I wish I were kidding on that, actually. That was a couple of comments. But we wish we had involved you sooner, 1. And 2, in involving you, you've become an integrated part of our team. And almost forget that you're not employed by, and so you're right in with our leadership team. So to that extent, you'll see the brand below that we've advanced with a focus on your growth, our passion. And whether you're a community seeking to grow, whether you're the business that's seeking to grow, it is really our passion here. And you can see that across 3 areas of performance, which again gets to the earlier question on measurement and accountability. We look at project performance, business performance, and community performance, and the tools that we are bringing to bear will continue to allow us to evolve those. And on page 16, in case you're wondering, and you've got some of your own constituents who you'd like to refer, we are always looking to engage additional growth businesses across the county. You might be wondering, so what is it that you do exactly? How do you make that happen? This is really a couple of bullet points that you can take with you that differentiates the work that we do maybe from some other economic development organizations that you might be familiar with, again, and across those 3 areas of performance. So before I close with some comments on the Foxconn effect and some analysis on that, I think I'll pause there and see if there's some questions that you might have or something you'd like to do a deeper dive in regarding your economic development organization. Yes, sir.
I have a question going back to page 5, your total new private investments from 2010 to from 2010 to 2015, we had just basically kind of a steady growth. 15 to 16 flat, and then in 16 it took off. How can you explain we had good growth, flattening, and then it took off in a real rush? What are the factors there?
The easy explanation is to say we've been continuing on the same trend. It's almost a straight line trend here of growth. What you see there that's accounting for that bend in the trend is really the fact that we were engaged in 2016 in several really complicated, larger scale projects that then bore fruit in 17. So because of that, you'll see a little bit of a flattening in 16, followed by an accelerated curve in 17. But when you average that out, it's been a pretty steady trend in new investment that we've been able to foster. Now, what we want to do is continue to angle that curve upward, and that's where the new opportunity through the revolving loan fund program and that engine of growth really, we're confident will help us do.
Chris Jenkins?
Hey, Christian.
Hey,
I'm one of the new county board supervisors as well, but I've been on the city council for a number of years now
yep,
in West Bend. So first off, thank you for your work with everything that you do. I know that the city has benefited quite a lot with numerous businesses that have been able to grow, and so that's wonderful. So when I first joined the city council, one of the first things that I wanted to tackle was our revolving loan fund. And I did a little mini study where I contacted all those businesses that we had done this with and checked on the return on investment, how many employees have you grown, and all that. And I did so with the intention that from my, I guess, conservative perspective, I said, hey, you know, it's not government's role to be helping these businesses thrive in the private sector. So I was happily surprised to be wrong because these businesses all were doing well and we were really seeing that return on investment. So in what you guys are doing, I mean, I understand it, but how do you solve that image perspective? And I think it ties in with your marketing. How do you better market yourself so that that's not even a thought in people's minds, and you know that you're the engine for growth in this community?
that's a really astute question. And that's really the focus of this next phase is working through that. In a nutshell, the conversation, and this is in part unique to Washington County, and I'm not sure this could be duplicated in counties across the state, certainly not in the same way. And that is recognition that we have scarce resources, and what we do with those resources, even though they are taxpayer dollars, what we're doing is effectively investing taxpayer dollars in whatever choice we make on how to use those resources. So what we're doing with this new messaging is we're investing those taxpayer dollars in a way that doesn't just get a return for that dollar, but creates a situation where the burden on every other taxpayer dollar going forward is all the less, because we're growing the size of that pie and that return continues to accelerate. So that's working smarter with what I think is going to be continued constraint on the ability of the taxpayers to support services. So rather than cutting services, let's grow the size of the pie, reduce the burden on each individual taxpayer, and maintain the services that they expect at the highest quality level. And we're here at the center of that as that growth engine. Now, getting that story out there, that's the next phase of our activity.
Got it. Thank you.
Fuzz?
Yeah, my name's Frank Carr. I have to tell you that these results look pretty impressive, and so congratulations.
Thank you.
I was a financial consultant with private businesses for 35 years. I worked with hundreds of them, and I know it's difficult a lot of times to work with these folks. But one of the things that strikes me as a problem, you touched on it briefly, was of all the people I ever talked to that ran businesses, I never recalled anyone who was interested in putting a new business or expanding a business in an area where they couldn't get employees. And it appears to me that with your success and the success of the general economy, we have a sort of a crisis around here with our low unemployment rate. And I was wondering if you had given any consideration to putting some of your development muscle and emphasis towards doing something that would add to the affordable housing that is in existence around here. And I'm not talking about low income, I'm talking about housing that would be primarily apartment housing, and also in the quality of life area. There's some folks around here who are somewhat concerned about the concept that the county is not supporting some of the quality of life issues that frequently I find, and from what I understand from talking to other people, many other people find, as far as attracting younger people to our community. And so I was wondering if you had given any emphasis to that, or if you're planning to.
So you had a lot in that question, and I'll unpack it a little bit here by first speaking to the workforce issue or the talent issue. And there are no quick and easy solutions. If we had them, we would have deployed them. And in fact, for many development groups, workforce and trying to tackle that is sort of like wading into quicksand, because you've got numerous entities that have influence in that, from your school districts to the tech colleges to the UW system. Then you've got the companies themselves and how they position themselves and their own internal cultures. And then you've got the just general cultures of communities and the attitudes of the workforce and so on. And a lot of that boils down to softer issues, such as, do I want my child to go to tech college? Am I comfortable with that versus the pressures to go to a four-year institution and little things like that? So weighing into the workforce arena is extremely complex and difficult. And there's really two things that are going on right now. One, we're looking at it company by company. So that falls under that organizational performance bucket. And part of the consulting and the work that we're doing is evaluating those companies so that they can more effectively retain the talent and do dramatic things on the talent retention, because we're not going to suddenly produce more population. We're not going to suddenly attract more population at the levels. That is an evolutionary effort, and we've got to have steps that evolve that. But really today, to solve the crisis, is about making sure that that talent doesn't move across the street or down to the next community or county for another dollar. So our strategy is focused at the company level and on the retention piece. The second thing that's happening is both a blessing and a curse, and it really is that Foxconn effect. Unless you have a change in the center of gravity within your low area economy, you are really going to have an evolutionary effort at attracting talent. And Wisconsin has an even added problem in that statewide, we're what's called a sticky state, meaning we do okay with the talent that is born here and raised here. They tend to, even if they leave the state, they tend to boomerang back when they want to raise a family, because they know, man, was it awesome to be a part of a family, really high quality of life. But we don't historically as a state do a great job at attracting new talent that's maybe not familiar with the state or understands our culture. In fact, you'll notice that was one of the issues or barriers. On the one hand, that small town Wisconsin feel is awesome. On the other hand, if you're not from the state, you can live in a town for 20 years and still not be from that town. And so that's a bit of an issue that we need to be able to effectively work through. And again, that's not an overnight issue. However, coming back to Foxconn, that does represent a disruptive force that on the one hand is putting strain, but on the other hand also represents a new center of gravity that will be attracting new talent. So we're already seeing some Washington County companies that had issues with certain segments of talent that are now starting to see and be able to attract, for example, I'm just giving one that we heard about a couple of weeks ago, and one of the customers I was working with, they have historically had issues with manufacturing engineers. And now they're starting to see manufacturing engineers take interest in this area, in part because they think there's an opportunity to grow their career. Of course, now the company's positive challenge will be retaining that talent once they secure them. So Foxconn has, while it's putting strain on the labor force, it's also representing a new opportunity for the labor force. As far as quality of life goes, first of all, I would suggest that the quality of life in Wisconsin is one of its strongest selling points, and of course, it also is not the lead selling point. Quality of life matters by the time you get down to you're comparing a couple of opportunities and they all look the same because you've narrowed them down based on your key variables, and now you're looking at soft things like quality of life. Wisconsin has done well, continues to do well, and we see Washington County uniquely positioned to be able to do well in that space. That's also not a leading factor for us, so our focus is on creating the demand that'll drive the opportunity to continue to grow the quality of life versus trying to work on the quality of life and expect that the demand is going to come. Work on the demand first and then allow that to drive the economic opportunity to continue to grow the quality of life. So that was my best job at unpacking a pretty complicated question.
Chris Bossert?
Okay, if I'm making a tick list of, and this may be a good lead-in for your next segment on Foxconn, if I'm making a tick list of things that we have to be focused on, it looks like affordable housing, labor, land inventory, so that if suppliers want to locate here, we have land for them to do that. What else do we need to have on that tick list?
It actually was pretty good. I think if we're able to accomplish those top items, along with making sure that we've got our toolbox optimized, which is what we are in the process of doing, for example, with creating a sustainable loan fund, I think you've got the hit parade right there. And I would not underemphasize any one of those aspects. And when we talk about housing, we talk about a portfolio of housing. I don't know about you, but my first house wasn't, well, it still isn't a $300,000 house, but my first house was an apartment, so I needed a place to, so you really need a portfolio of housing in your economy, to your earlier point.
Additionally, I'd like to add a little bit to what Christian was saying. Washington Ozaki, Waukesha Workforce Development is working towards developing and trying to get people more in tune with the technical colleges, working with technical colleges, working with businesses to try to get more people to accept that. It's kind of, I grew up, when I first came into the workforce, I worked for Alice Chalmers and I was working as a machinist. So it was a very honorable profession, a very well-paying profession for that matter. And manufacturing jobs are very well-paid jobs, and you don't accumulate a lot of debt when you go to a technical college. So trying to look at different ways to attract students to get more involved. I mean, they're talking with the high schools to try to get more programs involved for the schools, working with each individual company to try to make those opportunities available for training, and working with the tech schools to try to fill them up. As we know, MPTC, I think they eliminated their welding program for lack of having students. So it is a work in progress, and they work hand in hand with EDWC, but they are separate entities. So thanks.
To that point, we actually have been successfully advancing part of our package when we're working with a growth company is advancing resources, for example, for on-the-job training. Historically, it's been difficult to navigate. Federal resources tend to have all kinds of various entanglements and challenges, and they don't necessarily work at the speed of business, but that's changing, and we're starting to see some progress in that regard, so thank you for raising that. I can summarize the Foxconn effect by saying it's, depending on how you look at it, it's the proverbial, either you're looking at it glass half full or half empty. And I think if we look at economic development with the glass half empty, then I don't think we can expect the kind of performance that we get. So we look at the opportunity for Foxconn with the glass at least half full, if not overflowing in some cases. And here's what we're already seeing. So first of all, you see the impact here. And just leave it at that. Look at those bullets. That's ridiculous. I mean, we used to think a big project was $3 million, $4 million, $5 million, and here you're looking at 20 million square feet and 10 billion in investment. So it obviously is out of scale. So talk about that curve that was being asked about earlier. That's going to be an anomaly in the Racine County curve, to say the least. But what is it doing for Washington County? Well, there's 3 areas that we've seen impact today, and we're going to continue to see accelerated impact. One is on, I'll start with the labor shed. I'll start with the supply chain, and then we'll end with the labor shed. On the supply chain, we're already and have worked with Washington County companies that are entertaining and have been interviewed by Foxconn leadership to potentially be part of their supply chain. Won't get into a lot of detail on why that's a blessing and a curse potentially, and that's going to be an interesting part of this puzzle. But needless to say, there are significant supply chain opportunities, and that represents a chance for certain companies to achieve things that maybe they weren't able to previously. The second major influence, and we're already starting to see it, is this move towards manufacturing 4.0. And while that is going to introduce some cost pressures initially for businesses as they invest in new technologies designed to move manufacturing to the next level, what we're talking about with manufacturing 4.0 is candidly increasing automation, artificial intelligence, so that we're not talking, manufacturing 3.0 was just in time, for example, the just in time delivery. Make a part when you need the part. This next generation is we're going to have the intelligence and the artificial intelligence to know how to continue to optimize the part for the customer when we see something's going on the customer side of things. We can read their mind, so to speak, and deliver them a product before they even know they need it. That's really what we're talking about with manufacturing 4.0. Again, you need that center of gravity that's going to have the ability to influence and push in that direction. Foxconn absolutely is committed to that, and you're going to be able to, you will see that influence throughout our economy as other manufacturers continue to invest in a way to keep up. Obviously, the glass half full on this is that means all of our manufacturers in our region are going to be in a highly competitive position, both nationally and globally. And there's an item on here that represents a little bit of the politics, and I say this little piece of analysis with some risk, but one thing that we look at with the glass half full is there is something that we need to keep an eye on here, and that's the fact that it's cost a significant amount of money, or there's a significant investment on the part of the state of Wisconsin for a project of this size, unprecedented. And it'll remain to be seen whether the ROI continues to move forward as it has. I can tell you that there are certain signs and signals you look at to make sure that a project is continuing to be viable and moving on a positive path, and so far Foxconn is checking every one of those boxes, I'm sure not by accident, which is a positive thing. But there are some other things we are looking at. China is not a democracy like the United States. And a Chinese business does not operate in the same independent way that an American company does. In some respects, a Chinese company has an entanglement with the Chinese government. And so when we've got suppliers that are working with Foxconn and we're engaged in technology transfer, what is that doing to the overall global economy and the competitiveness? So this is an interesting space that we're going to find ourselves in, and Wisconsin is at the epicenter. The last impact here is on the labor shed, and I could say more about that previous one, but I'm about to get the hook from our team that says you're wading into dangerous territory, so I won't. But on the labor shed side of things, we're already seeing new development opportunities because to compete down in that Racine, Kenosha market, particularly if you're in a certain wage segment, I can't even imagine it. So if you're a company that's looking to grow and you want to grow and still be proximal to that market, but not be exclusively tapping into that labor shed, which is to say the Milwaukee, Chicago labor shed, then where are you going to look? Well, you're going to look to Washington County. And the project that you're going to be contemplating this evening later is not accidentally in part a function of that. So that represents your update from your development group.
Russ?
Christian, I just wanted to maybe correct you. Oh, I'm back here. You mentioned that Foxconn was a Chinese company. They're actually from Taiwan. Now, that might be, maybe the mainland China might consider that Taiwan is part of China, but if, I have a strong belief that them moving their company here is related to the overtures that China is playing on taking over Taiwan, much like they did Hong Kong.
That's important clarity, thank you.
Chris Bosser?
I think I speak probably for a lot of people on the board when I say that I'm excited that we could be part of the Foxconn growth that this region's gonna experience. And if there's things you need from us to support that, I think I probably speak for a lot of people on the board when I say, come to us right away, don't hesitate. We wanna support that. Thank you.
Tonight, how's that?
Yeah.
Well, right now, we're focused in on the catalytic elements of it. We recognize that there's a unique little moment in time we have right now to position, and so we're going to be particularly aggressive right now as we position in that space.
Okay, seeing discussion is ended, I will entertain a motion to move the closed session with number 8 to keep Christian right on board. Roger makes a motion. Dennis, second. Do we want to do this electronically?
Are you going into closed session, or are you just?
Just
We're- Oh, we're just moving it? Okay, we can do, all those in favor? Signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay. Okay, now I can entertain a motion to convene in closed session pursuant to statute 1985, sub 1, sub E, Wisconsin stats, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically to discuss the development and funding of a proposed business park in the village of Germantown. Mark? John? Bullock? Okay. Okay, we'll vote electronically. Okay. Is there a roll call for closed one? We're in closed session.
So we'll enter into closed session, and then once that closed session's over, we'll resume open session with the remaining agenda items.
Right. Dennis and Carol? Any further questions, or? You want to read it?
Title for the video. Read the title of the resolution so they know for the video.
Oh. So this is for resolution 2018, number 29. Authorize intergovernmental agreement with Village of Germantown for use of attraction loan fund to develop a business park. See, there's no further conversation, we'll vote electronically. Okay, motion carries 23 with one abstention. 23-0, one abstention.
I abstain because my son-in-law works for Briggs and Stratton.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, guys. Okay, moving on, personal appearances, letters, and other communications, compensation plan presentation.
Would you like me to do that now, or do you wanna move it?
Huh?
Do you want me to do it now, or do you wanna move it? Business stuff, it's up to you.
If you're ready, we can do it now.
Sure, I'm ready.
Okay.
Should be,
I guess I can use the PDF. Can I get into that stripe from here or not? We have to
you
relog in.
can, if you wanna sign in, this
Yeah,
is
I don't
what I
wanna sign in.
received.
It's a waste of. If I clear this off here.
You would need to close out and then log off and log on.
Yeah, I don't wanna do that. Takes too long. There we go. We'll just go off of here. All right, so I provided this presentation to the administrative committee this past month, and given the gravity of the matter, I thought it was worthwhile to present to the county board as well. I'm gonna give a abbreviated version of the presentation, because as the members of the administrative committee can tell you, if we give the full version, it's about an hour long, so out of the interest of time and everybody staying awake, I'll keep it short. So just a couple of items that we'll walk through in terms of the objectives of the presentation. I'm going to touch on the strategic priority that you gave me back in April of 2017 as part of the strategic priorities for the quality of life of the citizens of Washington County. I'll then touch on the conceptual model that we're proposing, and then go to the next steps and some feedback that we've received, and ask for feedback from you. So here's the strategic priority that you gave me back in April of 2017. A couple of highlights there in the green lettering. First of all, I note that although the result maps that we have did not specify this as a project, it was something that was articulated in great length and great detail back in 2015 as part of the strategic planning process. Furthermore, the goal that we were given as part of the strategic priority document was that we will present a proposed compensation plan. Initially, that was scheduled for January of 2018. Executive committee modified that to July of 2018, several months back. So we met that goal in June, presenting to administrative committee. What we presented and what you'll see in a moment is the strategy that we plan to use, the proposed approach, if you will. I'll also talk a little bit about how we fund that proposal. As I've told the administrative committee in the past, the planning portion of it itself does cost money, although I'm not overly concerned with that. Though that expense is somewhere probably between $100,000 and $200,000, which we can fund as a project. The larger ongoing expense is my concern, and I expect that to be in the millions of dollars. Also, a timeline to execute that, the implementation of this plan, I'll talk about in greater detail as we go. So first of all, to give some background of where we're at and how we got to where we're at. Basically, what you're looking at here is a presentation that was given by a professor from the University of Kansas, Professor John Nalbandian, and he talks about essentially a gap between what county board supervisors wish to see and what staff believes and sees. And relative, just to keep it short and in context of this specifically, basically it's looking at the board's perspective, and basically what I've heard since the day I got here, and post Act 10 was very, very popular, and that is an expectation that we move towards more of a private sector model of pay for performance. And staffs, well, basically what we've become used to over time, and that's a reliable and consistent pay plan, what I would term as pay for pulse. Essentially the great step plan that we've had in place for many years where as long as you are here, living, breathing, and not a bad employee, you're going to get a raise. So we've known for some time that there's kind of this gap in between expectations, and the compensation plan team was charged with trying to figure out how do we manage that gap. So the compensation strategy team is made up of myself, Matt Furno, and Human Resources Director Todd Scott, who's with us tonight. We started with the pay-for-performance concept and tried to work off of that to something that we thought would be manageable. We spent months going through discussions of what that might look like, how could we make it work in this organization, where as recently as a couple of years ago, we've tried a couple of different pay-for-performance models, started some of them and got slapped back on a few of them, and have really pulled back almost entirely to pay-for-performance. So we began to look at best practice models, other counties that are currently going through these discussions in real time. Waukesha County, Jefferson County, and Dodge County all are in some version or variety of going through looking at their models as well. It doesn't appear at first glance, some of those comparables, that there is a strict pay-for-performance model. Having served on a local school board, I can tell you that there doesn't seem to exist that type of model in school board settings either. So what we ended up doing was narrowing down to Waukesha and Jefferson. One, because Jefferson County is in the middle of going through a change in their model. And two, Waukesha County is in the middle of an evolutionary process, which has been playing out really over the better part of the last decade. So we contacted their consulting groups, and we brought them in, and we started to discuss different ideas that we had been kicking around from the compensation strategy team model. After all of those discussions, we had about 2 or 3 different vendors come in and talk to them. We were in the midst of a heated discussion of the compensation strategy team, and it ended rather abruptly. And we walked out of the meeting, and I, like I normally do, hung around that night for a while, contemplating what it all meant. And we basically came to, I had this aha moment. If anybody has read the book Drive by Daniel Pink, the full title is Drive, the Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. You may be familiar with this concept of autonomy, mastery, and purpose. There's a 10-minute video that goes along with this, and if you have time, I believe we sent out this PDF to you. You can copy and paste that hyperlink there and watch the video. It's 10 minutes, is relatively interesting and kind of a cute rendition of a TED Talk that was given by Daniel Pink about his book. Basically, the concept is this: people aren't extrinsically motivated, generally speaking, they're intrinsically motivated. And that's especially true, I will say, although this isn't part of the video, but I will say that it's especially true in the public sector and nonprofit sector. What typically works in many instances with extrinsic motivations, the carrot and stick, if you will, doesn't tend to work as well, especially in the private sector, especially for jobs that are intrinsically motivated. It goes into great detail in the book, and sufficient detail in a 10-minute video explaining basically how people, they've done studies, they cite the studies, and they've done analysis in great detail for any type of project or job that is anything more than kind of a do this and then you get that. Jobs that are sales work great for extrinsic motivation. Jobs that require you to think and are abstract in nature don't work well with those types of motivators. And so I've read this book, obviously. The video does a much better job than I could in the last 60 seconds explaining it to you. But the aha moment was, we're trying to fit a round peg into a square hole, and we need to get back closer to how do we fit a square peg, or at least a sanded down round peg, into a square hole. So the entire concept that I have, and that the compensation strategy team migrated to, was based on treating employees as individuals and rather than groups or tribes as we have, especially prior to Act 10. So there's a number of things that we've received. This presentation that I've given, we've given to a number of different groups, and we updated it right before we gave it to Administrative Committee. And so we've broken down what we're going to seek out in the next few months into a couple of different steps, and we've received the blessing of Administrative Committee on that. So step one in this process is really doing an evaluation system reboot. And this was overwhelming response from every group that we talked to. We talked to department heads. We had multiple presentations with some of our core value award winners. Then I asked Todd and Matt to work together and put together a list of employees who aren't overly thrilled with their employment with the county, to put it nicely, and to have them give us some perspective. All four of those groups spent a significant amount of time talking about the need to fix the evaluation system before we do anything else. And so some of the opportunity areas that we're going to look at are the specificity of the evaluation tool. Right now, our tool is relatively generic. What we would like to do is make it more specific to the type of job. Not that we'll have 200 different evaluation tools, but a little bit more specific to the type of job that individuals are in. Currently, for those of you who are not familiar with our system, we have a 5-star rating system, and under the pay-for-pulse model, essentially all you have to do is get a 3-star. If you get a 5-star, it really doesn't make any difference to us. You get the same step as if you got a 3-star. So there's really no incentive for you to do anything other than meet expectations. So we had resounding feedback from particularly the core value employees and the other group of employees that needs to be changed, because there's really nothing motivating in our current system. So another flaw in our system is that with the way that the system works, if you get a 3.5, normally you might remember from 3rd grade math, if you get a 3.5, you round up to 4. Well, not with our system. If you get a 3.5 or a 3.6, it rounds down to 3. If you get a 4.6, it rounds down to 4. So we need to fix that as well. The next piece is probably the biggest, at least on the implementation side, and that is supervisors need to be trained how to evaluate. One of the most disturbing quotes that we got out of the focus groups that we talked to came across overwhelming, similar to the ones before, and I probably heard it 3 or 4 different times in each group, and that is that employees have been told flat out that they're getting a 5-star rating is impossible. It's essentially walking on water. So that mentality has to change, and it's been a cultural thing that has happened over time at the county, especially in the last decade or so. So what we're going to try to do is create a system that minimizes subjectivity, maximizes consistency, ensures equity, and tries to achieve fidelity. We're also going to look at, investigate the option or opportunity to do 360 evaluations of supervisors. So those individuals who are doing the evaluations themselves would be evaluated all the way around. Their supervisor would evaluate them, their subordinates would evaluate them, basically trying to maintain fidelity in the system. No evaluation system is perfect. There's no such thing as an evaluation system that is perfectly objective. We have people running the evaluation systems, and we're all flawed, simple human beings. And so we know that is part of the system, but to try to add objectivity and to try to compensate a little bit for that, that this 360 evaluation will be something we investigate. Really, the next piece kind of just dives into the new philosophy that we're going to work towards. Again, treating employees as individuals rather than groups or tribes. If you adopt the concept that employees are intrinsically motivated, particularly in the public sector, and believe in the mission that we have in Washington County, which is very unique compared to other local governments, then I think this will resonate. First of all, and I said this to all the groups that we had, employee groups that we had, and they concurred, that the county board must be able to control the expenses of the organization. First and foremost, this is a priority of the plan itself. Right now, you may not fully appreciate this, but you have very little, if no control over how the gap works in terms of the steps. The way that we've structured it to date, we bank on having steps every single year, regardless of what happens. This new philosophy would give you the ability to have control over that. Now, with that responsibility comes, with that liberty for you to make that decision comes some responsibility, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But basically, in order to keep ourselves more up to date, we want to keep a rolling average. Do a market-based analysis every 3 years, a rolling 3-year. Maybe more reasonable for us to push that out to 5 years, but something that can be more relied upon. One of the major flaws in our existing system is we had been basically looking at doing an evaluation of it every 10 years. Now, the last time we did it was, by the time this gets implemented, about 7 years ago. And we can have a discussion, if you'd like, about how well that particular pay plan rolled out. But essentially, from my perspective, it's been 17 years since we've had a good evaluation done on our pay plan. That's problematic. I don't care what market space you're in. You can't look at employee pay every 17 years and expect anything good to come out of it. Essentially, what we have right now is garbage in and garbage out. Employees must be able to trust the system. So we don't want to have a system that's frequently manipulated. The merit ranges are something that need to be relatively consistent, and they know that it's market-based. So there's something to be said about having the independence, the board having independence to set wages, but once they're set, there needs to be some confidence by staff that that's what it's going to be. So I'll show you in just a few minutes what graphic of our model looks like, but essentially what it does, if you're familiar with our current system, there are 20 different grades. Out of the 850 employees we have, we break them down into 20 different grades, and each grade has a handful of employees, anywhere from 3 or 4 all the way up to 15 or so. Each one of those grades then has 11 steps. Those steps are a range of salaries, and basically every employee moves through those 11 steps one at a time, starting at 1 and working their way through 11, generally speaking. What we do with this plan is we take that range and we essentially break it into 3, what we're calling levels. So it's experience and achievement based. The achievements are established in conjunction with department heads and supervisors, and basically what it does is it buys into the autonomy, mastery, and purpose concept. We're trying to incentivize employees to get better at their craft. With this specifically, we put the market-based pay in the first level. So, in other words, you should be able to achieve market within the first handful of years in that first level. If you choose to stay in that first level, you can. But there's going to be some steps that you need to take in order to get to the second and then ultimately to the third level, and I'll show you those in just a few minutes. There's still going to be a satisfactory performance review requirement. In other words, employees will still be expected to be meeting expectations or beyond in order to move through the system. You don't get an increase if you're not meeting expectations. But the more you exceed expectations, the more you can expect to get compensated, and that's where the evaluation tool comes in. Again, that's not the case today. Basically, either you get a step increase or you don't. Again, market adjustments would apply to all these things. Cost of living adjustments would still exist in this scenario. And then every level achieves or exceeds the market rate. So once you get past that first level, It's up to the employee if they move to the next level. They don't have to. They can be at the market rate, they can stay at level 1 as long as they'd like. It's their choice. So that's the autonomy component. They need to achieve the advancement criteria that are going to be established. They need to be a good employee, in good standing with the county or better, and then they're able to move through the system. One of the components that we're also proposing is that what has commonly been referred to as a red circled employee will no longer exist. Essentially what we created the last time we did a playpen was approximately a quarter of our employees are red circled or red line, where they're at the top of the range that they're currently at, and there's essentially nothing they can do to get a raise. If we give a cost of living adjustment, they may get something. If we don't, they get nothing. So what we're proposing is actually allowing for good performers who are at the top of the range to still get something. Call it a bonus, call it a one-time lift, call it whatever you want to. If their performance significantly exceeds expectations, they're eligible for a non-base pay. So in other words, we can give, I'll just use the example of a $500 one-time payment to that individual, or $500 spread out over a year, but it doesn't affect their base pay. So we don't have to count on that each and every year happening. Okay? And then the last component, probably something that is changing in real time, is a career ladder model. So one of the complaints, concerns that we've heard from some employees, especially employees on the lower end of the grade level, is once they get to a certain level at the top of that, at the top level, with their particular position, there's nowhere for them to go in the organization. So one thing we want to look into doing is creating a career ladder for them. So if we have a particular position, a social worker position, and they get to the top level of pay, we're going to actually identify for them, here's a few other positions within the county that you could go to. Maybe it's management, maybe it's a position in another division, maybe it's something entirely different, and here's the criteria you need to achieve in order to get to that. Again, it's not, there's no silver bullet involved here, but it's just another opportunity to show them we want to keep good employees. So, system flexibility, one thing that we want to make sure we have the ability to do from a management perspective is hire new people at any level that we deem appropriate. So one of the major flaws in our existing system, when I first got here, we could only hire people at step 1 of whatever grade we are hiring at. I can tell you that makes it next to impossible to hire anybody who's got any experience at all. We've changed that to now allow us to go up to step 5 out of an 11-step system. That helps, but if you have a rock star employee, particularly coming from another county or another organization that's very similar to what we're doing, we rarely can land that employee. So this would allow the ability for people to hire with approval from HR and administration, hire anywhere at any level. We'd also be asking the administrative committee and ultimately the board to give us the ability to consider counteroffers. In other words, if we have a good employee who's got an offer from another organization, that we have the option, not that we'll always do it, but we have the option to counter that. Right now, there's no ability for us to do that, and I can count maybe a handful of times when we would have liked to have done a counter, but the reality of, at this point, calling a special meeting of administrative committee, getting the approval to do that, we really have no process to do it. By the time all of that would happen, the employee's gone anyway. Typically, they need an answer within 24 or 48 hours. Finally, integration of performance-based management. What this really means is we want to be able to show employees how what they do in the organization impacts our mission and impacts the goals that we're working towards, the results that we've established. How can an employee who is a correction officer understand that the work they do each and every day impacts a safe and secure community? We want to be able to tie the performance evaluation, the performance of that employee back to that somehow. And so we look to do that as as we work towards implementation. Hopefully you can see this better in your packet. But these are the three levels that I talked about. And I can provide you with more examples than this. We provided administrative committee with, I think, four different samples. But this is just one of them. This demonstrates an existing social worker position. Currently, the step 1 for a social worker is $22.32. Step 11 looks like is $28.68. You can see essentially all we did is we collapsed those steps into 3 levels or 3 ranges, 22.32 to 24.87, for example. And you'll see highlighted in red there that level 1 puts the market rate currently about step 6, if my memory serves correctly. It puts the market rate in that level 1. The other thing that level 1 does, if you look at this closely, is the pay increase range is higher for level 1 employees than anyone else. What we're trying to accomplish is moving the new hires as quickly towards market as possible, which will theoretically decrease the likelihood that somebody else is going to snatch them up quickly. So that flexibility is in there too. The final component, and probably the most important component, other than good standing, is some of the things I talked about before with regard to achievements. Completing county trainings, certifications in their craft, are things that they'll need to accomplish in order to go from level 1 to level 2, and the same from level 2 to level 3. So a couple of outstanding issues, things that came up to us from employees that I think you should be aware of. One, especially with longer-term employees, they have some concerns about how existing employees will fit into the new system. What if I'm at the top of my level now, where I've been here for 10 years, and all of a sudden the new plan rolls out and I'm now at level 1? Do I have to go through all the training requirements to get myself up to level 3? Do we need to do JDQs, job description qualifiers again? Because my job has changed a lot. We heard a lot of those. Those were kind of reoccurring themes that we heard. So those are some things that we need to work through. Another thing was this acronym DO that you can see there. I will read it. Do what you say you will do is what it means. Basically, employees said to me that they love the proposal. Basically across the board, department heads had some concerns about what it would be, how it would work relative to the budget, how it would work relative to evaluating employees. But the employees themselves, the frontline staff, said, we love it, but are you going to fund the training that's going to be necessary to move people through? So we need to be cognizant of that. Investing in internal training opportunities, we've begun to do this. We heard that. People appreciate that. We're continuing to do it. And a continuing theme of making sure that employees have opportunities and know exactly what they need to do to get promoted. So a lot of what has happened in the last 4 or 5 years, there have been several circumstances or instances when we've had internal applicants apply, and quite frankly, they are not prepared to become a manager or whatever that position might be. And so we had some of those individuals in the room saying, I understand what you're trying to do, I understand where my shortfalls are, tell me how to get there then, and train me how to get there. And so that's something that we know we have to work through and be cognizant of. I mentioned that department heads were concerned about how we budget for this. Now that there's going to be ranges instead of guaranteed steps for pay for pulse, we have a plan for that, but it is something we need to be cognizant of. A reoccurring theme from all the groups was, can we trust future boards to fund this? And the truth, and I told them flat out, was that the gap isn't going away. We all know that it exists. I told them unequivocally, all 3 employee groups and the department heads as well, that the organization is going to continue to have to lean out in order to be able to fund the things that we want to do long term. We cannot afford to have a new compensation plan unless you're willing to either A, make the organization smaller so that it can be sustainable, or B, basically raise taxes. It's going to be one of those 2 options. So they know that. They know that the path we're on is the path that we're gonna continue to be on. I have worked hard over the last 4 years to set that expectation so that they know what's coming, and they were very accepting of that. And then other needs, kind of touching on that autonomy idea, we heard repetitively that this is an important improvement. They're excited for the change, but one of the things that we're lagging on is technology and mobility. And a good example of that, I'll stick with social workers since I use that, is essentially if we have a social worker who lives in Hartford, who does their work in Hartford, we're requiring them today to probably travel about 60 minutes more than they really need to. They literally would have to come from home, drive in, come to the office, turn around, go back to do their work in Hartford, turn around, come back here to check out, and turn around to go home. So that's been in place for a long time in certain departments. Others are not that way, but we need some pretty significant improvements to technology and mobility to be able to make that inefficiency go away. And employees have been asking for it for a long time. Being county government, we've been really slow to bring some of those improvements. Some departments have went much faster, but generally speaking, we've been terribly slow. So here's just a few benefits of the new model. I won't read these to you. You have them in your packet. I trust that you have read them, but I will highlight the county board's liberty and responsibility. You need to have control over the expenses, and I can't tell you how much I emphasize that. At the same time, it requires a lot of responsibility on your part as well. We, some of the next steps, really, this could be updated. We did an employee survey as part of this process. We had a significant response rate. Todd, do you remember the response rate? 650 employees. So 3/4 of employees responded to our surveys. Overwhelmingly, the response was very consistent with what you saw today. Everything from focus groups to the surveys that we did to the off the channel discussions I've had with employees point to this proposal is what the organization needs right now. We've met with the 4 focus groups and presented everything that you just saw today. So the next steps, and we've already gotten the blessing from the administrative committee on this, and we're working towards it, is further developing the concept and answering some of those questions that I had shown to you there. Adding this as a strategic priority this late, probably early winter, midwinter, when we do the next round of strategic priorities with you, we'll be adding the execution and implementation to that. Presenting you the conceptual proposal today. In the next few months, we'll be working to engage the consulting firm. That was something that was budgeted for through the strategic priorities, so we have the dollars to do it. Now it's a matter of determining who's right. We hope to go out to RFP in the next month or so. Todd and I just met yesterday to talk through that a little bit. And then implementation will be in January of 2020. It seems like a long ways off, but surprisingly, it takes quite a while to work through all these things, especially since we've now added the evaluation component. So we have a stretch goal that we could implement by July 1st, but practically speaking, I don't think that's a realistic time frame. So I tried to go as quickly as I could through those. If you have any questions or comments or thoughts, I'd be open to hearing those.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So currently we have 850 or so employees. What do you think would be the number of employees to make this type of program sustainable? And could we get to that number over time?
I couldn't tell you exactly the number of employees to make it sustainable. It would depend on which employee groups we talked about. What I can tell you is that I do feel that we have the ability to fund this sustainably over time, but it's going to take work. So we have a couple of ideas for funding methodology. One is our health insurance fund is doing well compared to what it was when I got here particularly. And we're going to see, and you'll see in the budget coming up, that we're going to spend about $1 million less on health insurance in 2019 than we had in 2018, which means we're able to take those dollars and shift them towards something like the compensation plan. So that's a good start. Beyond that, it really comes down to making sure that we stick with what we've been doing on the priority-based budgeting side. And if we can do that, then we can be sustainable. And if we can't do that, then we all need to think about how we're going to fund government going forward. So I think we're able to do the plan that we're talking about today, as long as we keep going down the path we have been going down. If we divert from that, then the conversation changes.
Chris Wasser.
Okay, I think there's a lot of things I really like about this plan. I see we're ending the entitlement mentality, what you call the pay for pulse. The idea that simply because you've done your job, you get a step increase. We're ending that where, somebody who's a 5-star employee now is gonna get a better increase than a 3-star employee. That's great. Reevaluating every 3 years, that's absolutely great and critical. The job market today is different than it was in 2015, so I'm glad we're specifically planning for that so we can adapt as we need to. Now, if I'm reading this right, we're gonna be doing the merit increases and COLA increases, is that correct?
Right.
Okay, and for those COLA increases, are they gonna be different for different jobs each year? Let's say we think that IT people, their salaries have risen a lot, and maybe, social workers, their salaries haven't risen much. Would we give IT workers a bigger COLA to reflect that?
Well, maybe not IT workers, but
I mean-
no.
No, but I'm just throwing out
There
random
aren't any
jobs
IT
to make
workers
the
in the room,
point.
are there? So, the answer comes back to the 3-year market average, the rolling
Okay.
average, or if we decide to make it 4 years or 5 years. There will be groups of employees, when we look at that group, you might in fact say, yep, this group in the last 3 years has really gone up. We need to bring that whole group up, and that would be kind of built into that COLA model. And every other group of employees would fall under that just traditional, how do we keep up, keep the whole pay plan floating upwards, so that when those market adjustments come, they're not 8%, maybe they're more like 4 or 3.
Okay, and then, with the 3 levels, if an employee right now is, say, a level 1 social worker, and, we have the specific trainings they have to meet to become a level 2. Right now, it says they have to be meeting expectations to move to level 2. Is there gonna be any requirement that they be at least a little bit exceeding expectations? Or is it just gonna be an automatic that if they've completed trainings X, Y, Z, and they have a pulse and are doing an okay job, they move to level 2?
That's actually really good feedback. We talked about it as though it was meeting expectations, but I think there's merit to saying maybe it's something.
Maybe that's something we look at a little bit more
Yeah, we'll
and
talk
figure
about
out, yeah,
Yep, that's a good
a
suggestion.
discussion point. All right, that's all I have at the moment.
Russ?
First of all, I'd like to compliment you in coming up with this. The Village of Slinger established a plan almost identical to what you're proposing. And what we did find is that for the people, especially at the top, and they couldn't advance any further because they were redlined or whatever the term is. It helped that we established that bonus type program. So if they exceeded, they got that one-time bonus, and that really went a long ways. And it's also critical that staff has the ability to kind of prevent somebody from leaving to a different job rather than having to go to the whole board, because that is very cumbersome, and it's good to hear that that's in the plan. And I hope the rest of the board goes along with that.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, thank you. At the risk of getting into the minutia on some things, just a couple suggestions to consider. There's a lot of movement in or private sector, since you made some comment about pay for performance, which has been the key in the private sector for many years now, but performance rating systems are starting to go away in a lot of companies, meaning that you don't have a formal rating. Yes, you have performance reviews, but you don't have a rating. I think someone said it in your speech, well, no one can get a 5 because 5 is walking on water. So in essence, then you have less than a 5 rating system. And then if 1 is bad and you're fired, well, you should have been fired already. So in a sense, you only have 3 now. Well, then you're only working with 3. So a lot of companies have moved away from that. I know ours have, 70,000 some employees. We don't have end-of-year numeric rating anymore. We still have performance reviews. So I consider, or I suggest that you think about that, because you're never going to get away from the, rounding and arbitrary number, and everybody's going to focus on that and focus more on the role and responsibility, and did you meet or exceed? So true definition of what it means to meet or exceed, and then applying that to the level movement. So the question I would have is the level movement also predicated upon, is there a need for that level of expertise or skills in a county? Meaning you don't move someone a lane if you don't need that level of expertise in.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So one of the things that we have contemplated is not that these levels necessarily indicate different jobs, but more along the lines of a different quality of the same job. So one thing that we have done already with other positions, corrections officers as an example, is we actually have like a corrections officer and a senior corrections officer. So what we would not do is isolate people into these 3 levels. Instead, we might say, if we have, I'm just going to say 50 corrections officers, 40 of them will be in this grouping and 10 will be in the senior level. So that's just as an example of the type of thing we've talked about. So it's not, the levels is just as an indication of separate ranges and how to move people through. Differentiating the type or the quality, maybe a little bit more responsibility would be kind of that senior versus entry level.
Sure. And then the other areas regarding the ranges that you spoke of and market and exceeding that, I don't know if the plans are to, I think you said 3 years revisit. Would that also include revisiting average labor cost to adjust those ranges? Because typically ranges do adjust with average labor cost. So you presumably would never have somebody that would redline, because it's always adjusting based upon average labor cost. So those are just some thoughts that I would share. Thank you.
Les?
Yeah, I just, after having spent my whole career in the private sector, I will say that one of the things that I found most confounding, not only of the positions I held, but of the positions that others held that were in similar positions to me, was that everybody who works in any kind of an environment, whether it's for the county or for a private company, they know how to do their job because they do it every day. And they get very familiar with what their job is and how to do it, and they do it well or they don't do it so well, but the fact is they know how to do it. One of the most difficult things is evaluation of the people who work with them or for them, because you only do that once a year, let's say, or maybe once every 6 months. It depends upon your environment. So you really don't get a lot of experience doing it, and so it's really going to be critical, if this thing's going to work properly, that the people who are in the supervisory positions are actually very well trained as to how to do this. I mean, otherwise you get the same problems you get in all organizations where, somebody over here says, well, he's there, he got a high rating because he's his friend, and this other guy he doesn't like, so he got a low rating. And it's difficult to do that as far as the training is concerned, but it seems to me that with the system you've set up here, which sounds like a terrific system, one of the key is going to be the training of the supervisory personnel who are actually doing the ratings of people.
Completely agree.
I I guess a two-part question. If you are involved with the military, you know, basically you automatically get a rank increase. Once you've had so much time in grade, you automatically go up. But at the same point in time, after you've gone up, if you never improve it again, you can be gotten rid of. I mean, you can get to a certain level where no matter what you do, that person is just not going to improve their performance. And I'm trying to kind of provisions built into this kind of program to handle that or not.
So it's interesting that you bring up the military, because that's really where this all started and came from. Obviously, I have some background in that. It's really where the level 1 concept came from. And if you notice, if you look really closely, you'll see essentially within as quickly as 24 months, but practically probably within 4 years, which is also exactly what the military does. Within 4 years, you're at market. And then once you get past that point, now you're trying to become a sergeant, which pushes you up to a different level. And now, but that takes training. You can't just get there, right? So it's the same conceptually. Now, weeding employees out because they can't get past level 1, we haven't contemplating that. I can tell you based on our history, and Todd could give you probably specific numbers, the number of employees who do not meet expectations, so below that 3-star that we've normally done, is very, very low. It's a couple of percentage points of the entire county. So again, like I said, I guess in our case, if somebody wants to sit, to use your analogy, at a specialist level 4 for their whole life and make, in this case, $24.87, if they're meeting or exceeding expectations, God bless them. We don't plan to do anything about it. We expect that they're gonna want, the types of requirements that we're talking about to move from level 1 to level 2 are gonna be the types of things that are very achievable. They've just gotta wanna do them.
Okay, second part of the question, are there any localized models that you're using or can access for questions, examples, and so on? Other counties that are doing this sort of thing?
No. No, we're creating something totally new and different. The closest example will be Waukesha County. They have something kind of similar, but as I alluded to at the beginning, they've been in this evolutionary model for a decade. Now, keep in mind, Waukesha County is a dinosaur. They're 3 times our size and they move even slower than we move. So change for them is almost impossible, but they have been slowly migrating to try and do something similar, which is why we're interested in their consultant. But there isn't a county doing exactly this.
Dennis?
One thing, I mean, I understand the system of the 3 different phases and training and all the rest of that. Piggybacking off our earlier statements about evaluation, one thing I've always been really strong with is peer review and peer evaluation. When I worked in a grocery store, I went through a training program for security, and the security expert was saying, if you want to know what's going on in your grocery store, you don't go to the manager, because he has no clue. So you go to the bag boy, the stock boy, because he's all over that store. He knows everybody that's working in that store. He knows who the people are that are doing the work and the people who are not. And so I just believe that that is just an excellent statement. Usually, every worker knows, especially I would imagine like a public works department, who's the guy who just really is a hustler who gets the job done? Who's the guy that everybody goes to because he knows exactly what to do? You know, that kind of review really, I think, makes more sense, at least a component of it for evaluation. Not necessarily, obviously, the manager or a department head has to have a lot to say, but I think that it's instructive of the peers, what they have to say. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Brian Krebs.
Thank you. How will this integrate in with represented employees?
Elected?
No, represented.
You mean union employees?
Correct.
It won't.
They're still going to be their own tribe, their own island.
Correct.
Second question, what'd you tell the employees when you were doing interviews and they had concerns that, you know, they're at, was it grade or step, you know, 10 or 11, and they're afraid they might get moved back down into like 1 again? What happens to those types of people?
Practically could happen. As a matter of fact, because it's been 17 years, I expect it's going to happen. I think we're going to need to be flexible in allowing them to work through levels and not put any onerous restrictions on those employees to work their way up through the levels, and that's essentially what I told them. That doesn't mean that we're, you know, good standing is good standing. You can't not be meeting expectations. On the other hand, I expect the types of achievements that department heads and staff will give, supervisors will give us to move an employee from level 1 to level 2 and level 2 to level 3 are going to be the types of things that somebody at a step 10 or 11 has already done. And if not, I think we've got a different problem. But I really don't expect much of that. I expect anybody who's been here for 10 or 11 years or more is going to have achieved most of the types of training we've asked.
Okay, thank you.
Christopher.
All right. Supervisor Kelling brought up the idea of peer reviews, which kind of fits in with 360 reviews, and they can be very valuable. I think the one caution is I think we're better off trying that only with supervisory positions first, so we can see the time investment involved, and then decide if we want to move to that review model for all employees. So that's the one cautionary remark I'd give there. But there can be a lot of value in that. The other thing though is I hear talk of the 5-star employees and nobody can get a 5-star. And as I'm thinking about it, that's a concern. Every organization has a few employees who are superstars, and they should be able to get that recognition. So, you know, there's solutions we can come up with, I'm sure, but, you know, whether it's 5% of our employees or 10% of our employees, I'd want that to be achievable.
And I think that point is a nice one to end on because it kind of addresses the concern that department heads raised about budgeting. What we expect to have happen is we expect not much is going to change in terms of the dollars budgeted because we anticipate that there will be a bell curve of how employees are evaluated. And that's what we'll train towards. You can't, it's not possible to have, it's almost impossible, I should say, to have 60 employees and all of them are 5-star employees. Somebody's doing something wrong somewhere, if that's the case. So I agree. What was most disturbing about that feedback was the people that I was getting that feedback from, I know personally are some of our very best employees. And there's nothing more demoralizing than looking to your left and seeing an employee who barely meets expectations, getting everything the same as what you're getting. And that happens all the time. And I'm not even talking about pay. I'm talking about a pat on the back with a 5-star rating. I mean, that's all within our control, and we're not even doing that. That's sad.
And I agree with everything you just said. And there's definitely no department of 60 employees where all 60 are 5-star employees. But it sounds like within Washington County, we have 60 employee departments where 0 employees are being recognized as 5-star employees.
It's impossible.
And I would envision a department with 60 employees to have maybe 2 or 3 who should legitimately be a 5-star.
And one of the things one of the things I can see happening from having a program like this, I came from the public sector too, so I kind of understand how rated. But when you put together a program like this that is going to create superstars, it gives them an incentive to become a superstar, and we're looking to lean government, so we're going to have people that are working over and above and be able to provide the services for the quality of life for citizens of Washington County. And we can do that with a smaller team when we have a team of more superstars. Thank you. Okay, great. I think we can move on from there. Move into consideration upon request reading of resolution ordinances. 2018 Resolution 24, amend 2016-2020 capital improvement plan and transfer from jail assessment funds, jail flooring. Mike, do I hear a second? Roger? Any discussion? Seeing none, we can vote on this electronically. Ready? There you go. Motion passes 23-0. 2018 Resolution 25 for advisory referendum, property tax dark store loopholes. Chris? And Chris. Chris Bossert and Chris Jenkins. Okay, Marilyn.
Yeah, I have a little problem with something like this. I know that WCA has also sent a memo out. However, we did send a resolution into WCA to have this acted upon. So to me, it's like a slap in the face to the legislators that we don't have enough clout in giving you this. We now have to have a referendum to support what our actions are. And therefore, I think that's wrong. That's my personal opinion.
Thank you. Chris Bossert.
Okay, in answer to Supervisor Murden's concern, which I understand, Supervisor Gundrum, Assemblyman Gundrum, sorry, Assemblyman Brooks, Senator Strobel, they want to get this dark store stuff passed, and the roadblock they're running into involves, Robin Voss, basically putting up a roadblock. So this is trying to help support them in their efforts in overcoming Robin Voss. And it sounds like they view this favorably. So therefore, I'm in favor of this. I think this is a good thing. We have to get these major retailers to pay their fair share of property taxes and stop putting it on small businesses, stop putting it on private homeowners. So I'm going to support this, and I hope everybody else will join me.
Thank you. Carol?
Yeah, are we a standalone on this, or is this a movement that's going across the state, county by county by county?
It's a movement across the state. WCA, as Supervisor Merton alluded to, has been sharing the same resolution that you're looking at, as have a number of other counties. I think it started in Outagamie County. So, I think to the point of concerns with WCA pushing this, I think WCA will be the first one to admit, I know the league will, that they failed. And it didn't work. It was the speaker. I think he'd probably tell you that. WMC was much more powerful than WCA and the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. And the only way to fight that is with people pushing Robin Voss. I hope he watches the video.
Thank you. Marilyn, do you have another question?
No, I'd just like to follow up and say that, I think that's all well and good. However, I just do not like that kind of a tactic put upon legislators. I feel they're more of a friendly type group, and we can do that by talking to them and having them voice their concerns to other legislators. That's just how I feel.
Thank you. Pete?
Thank you, sir. Good luck with this one. There's a number of senators in Madison who haven't gotten that, and I know one very personally, been working on it for a long time to get it to come across, but a lot of them get money from some of these big corporations. I rest my case, Your Honor.
Thanks, Pete. Okay, seeing no more discussion, we'll vote on this electronically. Motion passes 23 to 2. 21 to 2. Thank you. Okay, 2018 Resolution 28, revised relocation order, County Trunk Highway K, State Highway 83, Interstate Highway 41. Roger and John? Yes.
Just get a little bit of a clarification of exactly what this is, didn't quite understand it. What's the revision on this?
Scott, you want to speak to that?
Thank you and good evening. Is this on?
Sounds like this.
Excellent. So we have several revisions on this. We actually increased the fee area. That's area of land we're going to take. Think of like a warranty deed. We actually purchased land. That went from 1.473 acres to 1.534. So it increased about 0.06 acres, about 2,600 square feet, kind of put it in perspective. And the TLE, the temporary limited easements, we reduced that from 2.45 acres down to 2.01 acres. So basically what we're doing is we're refining the plan a little bit, getting that plan closer to final. They based the first right-of-way plat off of 30% plans. Now we're at 60 to 65% plans, so they're actually decreasing that area that's going to be impacted. So what they did was they found one lot, they actually had the right-of-way wrong on it. So we looked at the whole plat, the whole length, to see if we could do other reductions in that plat as well. So with two little minor additions, if you see on there, and most of them are reductions in the area. So we actually tighten up the slope a little bit. If you're familiar with the area, there's some areas where there's a fence out there already by the gravel pit, where if we didn't have to impact the fence, why pay for them to move the fence back 5 feet? Let's just shorten up our ditch slopes a little bit to help that out. There was a sign by HIS where like we just tighten up the slopes a little bit. We don't have to move their sign, their building. So a lot of those that were looking at Gary's Meat Market, for instance, they just did an addition. So we could tighten up those slopes a little bit, add a little bit to their culvert where we didn't have to impact their businesses. So really looking at really reducing the impacts out there as much as we can. So.
Thank you.
Joe?
I just have, I guess, a simple clarification here. I thought back when we voted on this, to do this reconstruction, it was at 5 million. And now on here I see it's $5,418,076.
Right, so the 5 million is actually construction costs, of the 400,000 is like engineering, inspection, soil test, title reports, land acquisition, that kind of stuff on top of it. So that was 5 million when you looked at it. Originally it was 5 million for the construction part of it, but now we felt we should actually include all the other costs that are associated with that as well.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, we can vote on this electronically. Motion passes 21-2. Next meeting date's August 8th, 2018, 6 o'clock p.m. Want to let you guys know that Supervisor Parsons has resigned. See his empty seat over there. Executive committee will be considering the next steps on Tuesday, and hopefully we'll be bringing a candidate for you to approve in the August meeting. With that being said, we also have 2 other empty chairs, and I would entertain a motion to postpone the closed session on number 11 to the August meeting. Christopher Bossert and John Bullock. We need to vote on this electronically, correct? Motion to postpone, I would be to postpone.
While that's processing, just so you know, Supervisor Parsons is fine. He just moved out of his district. So he's healthy, he's okay. I know you're all very worried.
I saw all the concerned faces out there.
Well, fine is
He's normal. He's like normal.
Hope he's watching.
Yeah. I would.
Pete, got a vote? Chris Dice? Joe Gonring? Bob Hartwig? Chris Dice? All right. Motion carries 21-2. Entertain, since we have conducted all our business, entertain a motion to adjourn. Roger and Brian? Krebs? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, everybody.